The first one comes from Broxy, I think that's how it's pronounced. She says, as my understanding of the three principles deepens, I can see how different so-called mental illnesses come from a misunderstanding of how the human experience works. So I can see this clearly with things like depression, anxiety, addictions, etc. But what about bipolar? Will teaching this to someone who is manic help them?
Okay. You want to answer?
No, I want you to.
Okay. Well, first of all, the importance of a principle, it can't be understated in that the importance of a principle pertaining to all people, all conditions, all that without the principles, there would be no reality itself. So there's a link between the principles and everyone's experience of reality, of feeling, of the perception, of the existence. That without the principles, there's no existence, and so that's like a starting point, and that really helps to underline the value and importance of this knowledge for all people in all situations and circumstances, even those that might be having what we would call a manic episode or a manic depressive episode, to of course then to allege or suppose that wouldn't be relevant or pertinent to someone such as them would be ridiculous. It would be, of course it would be relevant and important and pertinent to them. Now, how you might get, if you're a teacher or a therapist or a counselor and you're wanting to help people, that's a whole nother challenge, and the opportunity to get across to someone what these principles mean or how it pertains. That's another matter. But does it pertain? Absolutely. And it pertains to everyone in any culture, in any religion, in any circumstance. It pertains because these are universal, neutral principles. And I think that's helpful to know. The particular case challenges, like a counselor might confront with getting it across to a particular person. That's another that's another level of challenge. But the good news is that's all you have to do. You don't have to get across other things that are irrelevant. You're guided by these principles, and the principles are the teaching. They are what people need to know or don't know or might know that would really help them. So it narrows down and universalizes the effort, and it simplifies the teaching, and it's pertinent to whatever person in whatever culture or situation they're dealing with.
So would it come down to that a person, no matter what they got going, or what their habit is, if they get a new idea that their thinking is not going to always be trustworthy, and that there is something that is constant that can help them, given that they can't trust their own thinking all the time. Is that anywhere near close?
Well, it might be. And what would help them know? What about that would
be the
trustworthiness? Would be valuable for them?
Well, for one thing, to simply know that that their thinking is not always trustworthy. I mean, just that alone. If you think your thinking is always trustworthy, there would be no reason to question it, or to look for any other kind of an answer or anything. For me, that was like such a shock. I thought I was healthier than that, And then I thought, oh, I'm not going to be able to trust my own thinking all the time here. Okay, so what's going to help me? And to me, that there's that constant nature about the three principles as to how we're experiencing life through thought in the moment, not through circumstance in the moment. That's there to help me sort things out as my life goes along. And I'll catch myself being on the wrong side of the situation from time to time. I'll be thinking it's you is the problem. And so, then I can catch myself, which is really nice. It's something it's given to me to have a way to kind of catch myself and question my own thinking. But if I don't have any idea that there's the chance that I might be wrong, of what's going to ever change.
I would think that would be one of the things, would be a hallmark of people, that as people don't think their thinking is ever wrong, the more dysfunctional they become, because they become very hardened and very egocentric. They become very committed to their own perceptions and their own beliefs and ideas, whatever it is. And on the contrary, as people, the humility or the pause or the getting a break from getting some way to ascertain that I'm not seeing the way that I'm party to something that is that I'm experiencing, and I'm getting it, and I can get fooled by that. That would be of great value to.
And I think that as it would happen to you, and then you would come across it, and you would question yourself, I think that you would, within your friends, you would start to see the ones that were clearer about this than the others, and you could learn to trust them a little more. It would just open a door to a lot of things, I believe. I think that you could look through, I don't know, there's literature out there that they could read that would help them to get clear about this. But just the people around you that are saying, you might want to rethink that, it would help you to be able to take them to heart better. And you could make better use of their caring about you and your life and your decisions and stuff like that. And I think that would be heartening to anybody, that other people cared enough about them to try to help them out. even if it was hard,
Yeah.
which it usually is.
Yeah.
If somebody's convinced of something.
Yeah. It's a great honor, a great love, or a great friend who can say, you know, I love you, but I don't think the way you're thinking about this is quite 2020.
Anybody else got anything about this? Yeah, Dennis. Hi there.
Hi there. Well, I would say there's a little bit of bipolar in all of us.
True.
So it's something that we can, and in some ways, bipolar, if someone is bipolar, I guess you could say they're totally responsible for being bipolar, but I don't know that that helps them any.
I don't think it does. I think you're right.
Could be attributed to a physical thing, but there can be a gift in it, I would say, in what you said, Zelda, that not to trust their thinking when they're at either pole of it. And there could be a lot of self-compassion that could come for themselves when they're in either one of those spaces, to know that they can't trust their thinking, which would take them to who they are beyond being bipolar.
Yeah.
Which is what I have to do for myself too.
Yeah, like all of us are a little bit bipolar. So
yeah, maybe my experiences aren't as extreme,
right.
But I'm still gonna be questioning. It's like I'm wondering about myself a little bit here. You know, that's a great point. And they do, as they start to get onto themselves, they start to sort of see the not the trademarks, but we'll call it trademarks because I can't think of hallmarks. There we go. The hallmarks of, you know, what they got going on. It's like, oh, I can kind of see a direction here that I'm going, and it might tip me off as to what's going on here. So they start to be able to spot themselves, which is what we do too.
I thought maybe you could say something more about one of the implications, because if we go into detail about one of the implications, then we might learn something more about those implications. So, but how about explaining more what separate realities are?
I'd love to. It didn't analytically come to me. It came to me just insightfully. I've been around this stuff for 40-something years, and I've heard people talk about separate realities for 40-something years, and I never gave it a thought. It never got my attention. I never once wonder what they're talking about. It's amazing that I missed it for that long, you know. But then once I started thinking about the three principles as a paradigm, I know how 100% that is, and that took it to a different place for me. And so I started realizing that everybody was in their own separate reality, because I couldn't have Keith's thoughts and he couldn't have mine. And it just really, I was kind of still thinking we were in a world of agreement about everything, and that we all thought enough the same that I could just count on that. And then with separate realities, because I'm the thinker of my world, and he's the thinker of his, that I would need to be a better communicator about that, and a better listener, because he doesn't think like me. It was just, it was so wonderful. In a marriage, it's just huge. to realize your partner's not just being, oh, I don't know, what would I think he would be being? Disrespectful, I think. I think he is so disrespectful. What is up with him, you know? Did his parents teach him to be this way? Now, I didn't say any of that out loud, but I would think it, which would then harden my heart towards him. And then I wouldn't be as nice to him. And then when I saw Separate Realities, it was like, oh, we think different. We don't think the same. He thinks different about that. I don't even know how he thinks about it. And I thought I could ask. And I could also tell him how I think about that. Because we clearly have different ideas here. And he thinks his is right, and I think mine is right. That's a recipe for bad stuff right there. And you can count on it. And so then I started saying, would you tell me how you think about this? Because I realized I didn't know. A lot of it I was extremely surprised by. I'd never had that thought in my life that he had. And then I would tell him how I thought about something, and he would say, I've never had that thought in my life about that. I thought, wow, no wonder we get into arguments here. So we started learning one another better. I thought the same thing about my daughter too. I thought, oh, I could tread a little more lightly there too. You know, I could ask her, tell me how you think about this. Some of her stuff was so great. I said, I like the way you think about this. I think I'm going to go with you. You know, because she would even be evolved over what I would know.
Who is that?
My daughter, our daughter.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And, you know, she's a new generation, and she's a good thinker. She's a very good thinker. She's insightful also. And so she would tell me I could be truly open, not holding on to mine, you know, oh, mine's the best, mine's the best. When you know Separate Realities, it's not about best and better all the time. It's about different. And can you hear the difference? Can you see what the difference is between yours and theirs? And how do you travel down the road, you know, with its difference? So it certainly makes being married a million times easier. It makes being somebody's child. You know, your mom and your dad are going to think different than you. You're going to think different than your kids if you have kids, or your cousins, or your employer, or your neighbor. But I love that I don't have the judgment that I used to. I used to have a lot of judgment about some of the ways other people thought. And I didn't let them know, you know, that I thought that their way was pretty, well, it just wasn't very evolved or something. I don't know what I would have said to them, but I didn't say to them. But how do you
think harebrained?
Yeah,
or,
you could. You can think all sorts of, nutcase.
Yeah.
That's another one of my favorite professional terms. That person's a real nutcase. How do you think about Separate Realities?
Well, there's something wonderful about it that is so profound that it's kind of a shocker. I used to think there was kind of a group think phenomena, and I was in that group, you know, and we, those of us in the group think, we were basically right, you know. We kind of had, you know, we were sort of, and then when I saw Separate Realities, I thought there's no group think. Oh my gosh. And it was so shocking, and so it sort of dismantled this house of cards that I had about being right, or it was.
It's like a false sense of security.
Yeah, I've been counting on this straw bale house. You know, it gets kind of like one of those the three pigs or whatever, the wolf comes in, blows the house down. It's like it just blew the house down, and but it took away something that was an illusion, and it brought into focus something that was true, and it reminded me of freedom, that everyone had, has freedom, and no two people think alike.
Would that be the same as saying his free will?
Yeah, freedom of thought. Freedom of thought is like the rule of existence, and so of human existence. And so, but it's funny how curiously settling and liberating that was to creating communication. Like you're saying, you can ask people, how do you think about this? And so it lent to great new avenues of respect, and not to say that I had total respect all the time, but the truth of it destroyed something that I thought was fact that was actually fiction, and it gave me, it really did help, and it showed me the principles.
And these are the things we fight about all the time. We had one couple, they fought every day. They fought a number of times every day. And they were determined to stay together. They'd been married longer than we'd been married.
Oh yeah, like 50 years or something. Yeah. But they fought every day.
A number of times every day. And she was the client, and she was learning from us. And it took a couple of years. And then one day here it goes. He does it this way, she does it that way. His way is right, her way is wrong. That's going to be the argument. He heads into it. I think they're on the phone. And then she says, we think differently. And it stopped him dead in his tracks. And he was smart enough to know. He said, well, we do think differently. And that they just dropped it, and they didn't have an argument for the first time. And they just more and more would come upon that truth of the matter, that they think different. And they let that, they realized in that same breath sort of, that this isn't about fighting to the death here as to who's right or wrong. It's, can we be respectful and realize we think different? We're all individual thinkers. We're all in our own separate realities, and it sort of behooves us to be respectful of one another in that way. And we can live a very, very different life. And isn't it nice to have we'll head into something. We'll have something we have different ideas about. And we'll start to head in. Neither one of us know anything about it, but that hadn't crossed our mind.
Yeah, never mind that.
We're both going to say
I'll
something.
be an expert in that subject.
And then one or the other of us will say, we neither one of us really know anything about this. Why don't we just stop now? Before we continue to have this argument and try to decide the winner. Who's the winner here?
But these little separate
they're little wars,
little turf wars, and little,
yeah,
get your backup wars, and a little bit, we fight these wars pretty much, I would say, most people every day are fighting some kind of, in their mind, they're in some sort of war with, or they're at odds, or they're in conflict, or they're in tension, or they just, there's just something about day-to-day life that makes them feel not at peace. You know, they're not at peace most of the day. Maybe, and not that may be presumptuous, but I think it's on. I think it might be honest, and it doesn't look like that there's any real answer to that. That you're just sort of in a perpetual at oddsness with getting older, or your cousins, or your mate, or your gender, or their gender, or there's just something about life that,
or the way your wife cleans the counter as opposed to the way you clean the counter.
yeah.
Or the way your wife cleans the stove as opposed to the way you clean the stove. So just all of that kind of stuff. And you sit around and think about it when you're not talking to them about it too, because you're trying to get a better argument so you can win.
Yeah, you think about it, yeah.
And boy, to have that start to go away, and I can feel our daughter's name is Maddie, and she's 33. And if we ever say she's a different age, it's because we've gotten confused beforehand what age she was, and we finally get on the right page. But I can even feel her with us, that we do less of that, she does less of that. And we'll start into something, maybe the three of us, you know, and then we'll all just start to back out and just think, this doesn't matter. This is of no importance whatsoever. And we just quit talking about it. And nobody says, aren't we going to talk about that anymore? You know, we're just thrilled that we've switched understanding, and we don't need to talk about it anymore. I especially love the ones that we don't really have a clue what we're talking about.
If we could do a reality show, I'm just making this up, but the reality show of our family would be, now I don't know, in my mind it might be really boring.
Oh, it probably would be.
But then again, there's a funny thing that happened that kind of makes me wonder about this. We did a lot of videotaping of our family life when our daughter was young. I got a video camera, and we just taped everything. She was just so interesting to us as a little child. She's very articulate, and she was talking, and so we filmed hours and hours and hours. Well, she got all of those videotapes together for a college project, so she took them to college. She said, I want all of those videotapes. All of them? She says, yeah.
But she got them together to have them duplicated.
Yeah, so she took them to college with her. And then she tells us, you guys, this is really interesting. I said, what? She says, my roommates have discovered all of our home movies, and they all have watched every single one of them religiously. I said, what? She says, they absolutely love it. Everything that is on there is so interesting to them. Now, I thought it would be like watching home movies, college kids watching home movies of a friend. Like, what would compel them to be, all of them watched all of them? Which I thought was, I mean, she had like 5 roommates. And, but, so, there goes, that betrays my whole thing, that it would be so boring. But there was something interesting in it, and I can't help but think, this is just in my head, that probably knowing what I knew about those girls through Maddie and my acquaintance with them, their families were very dysfunctional. They would have wars over the father pushing the daughter around, and the funding and the drug use. I mean, there was just an unbelievable amount of problems that these girls had that Maddie didn't have. And I could see that their families were just as troubled as the kids were. And I don't know what it might have been a real shock to see how a normal family might relate, and the topics and the conversations and the feelings and the humor and the goodwill of it all.
Just the gentleness of it all.
Yeah.
I think it was that we taped times that were more interesting.
Yeah,
You
we
know,
did. I mean, but for whatever reason, but
well, because that's you tend to do something that's a little more interesting rather than everybody sitting around eating or people watching TV together. Or
but if you watch reality TV, you know, and you see families and
well, it's true, and it's
you see the
fascinating.
topics,
It's like, oh my God, they're going to argue about this. This is amazing.
yeah.
You know?
Or do they know where their feelings are coming from? Oh my
Have
gosh.
they forgotten they're on TV?
I mean, it's really interesting the drama they go through
Right.
and the problems and the money they spend and the circles they go in, and it's just like, wow, it's a shock really to see
Yeah.
what even successful, so-called successful people, uh, what they're thinking about is really amazing. It's so conflicted, and so there is a lot of at oddsness, and not a lot of fun. You know, but then again, anyway, that's my thought. I don't have to say anything more, but it's fascinating.
Anybody else have anything to say about separate realities? Yeah, Barbara.
Well, I'll share something that I observed, which I thought was really interesting. I have friends that I've been hiking with for probably 15 years, and right now we're not hiking because we've got knee replacements and hip replacements and stuff coming up. So, but we get together for coffee, and sort of two of us have two of the women have known each other for a really, really long time. And one of them is someone who always has really good ideas for you, that, you know, things that would solve your problem. So we're having coffee, and the other woman, the woman that she's known for many, many years, was talking about a situation she was in, and she didn't really want to be in it anymore, and she wanted to get out, but she couldn't figure out a graceful way to step aside. So the other woman had, you know, had all these ideas for her, and so anyway, Betsy would give a good idea, and Betty would say, no, that won't work because, and so then, but Betsy would be insistent, and then she'd, you know, adjust her idea a little bit and keep pushing. and so it didn't go on for very long, and pretty soon Betty says to her friend, you know what, I think we're just not going to agree. It was wonderful, because that was just the end of it. And I mean, they're not students of the principals or, you know, anything like that, but I think we all have, it's part of our innate potential to understand, you know, something. It certainly helps tremendously to have it articulated and to understand the principles underneath. But it was such an interesting little interaction to observe, and then we just went on to something else, you know. But I love seeing that kind of innate, probably unarticulated understanding that pops up just as well, you know, all over the place. Anyway, I love that. Yeah. That little interaction. And it was, you know, other times just similarly, and these are all, I guess, little examples in life of the fact of separate realities and what understanding them, how that understanding, whether you would be able to say what it is or not is helpful. But a couple of weeks ago, my husband and I had this little thing that started, and I don't know, I said something, and he said something back to me, and I said, "Don't be snappy with me." And he said, "Well, you were snappy first." And I said, "No, I wasn't. You were snappy first." And then we just started laughing. I mean, and that kind of thing. I mean, luckily we both have an understanding when we do of the principles. But as you were sharing, I have so many stories and examples now through these years of how, for instance, my husband and I have come to understand, because of separate realities, not only the other person more deeply, but we get to see our own thinking in a way we've never seen it before, which is phenomenal. I mean, I think always of that image of the iceberg, and how much of our thinking we really are aware of, that or the existence we're creating that we live in, and separate realities, when you bump up against it and at some point realize that's what you're bumping up against, you have an incredible opportunity to and it may not happen, right in the moment. Often it doesn't, but maybe a few days down the road, you find yourself reflecting on a disagreement or something that happened, and you get curious about it. And like you were saying, you can say, well, how did this make sense to you? Or, what was your thinking about it? And I remember another example. There was a tree that we had that I bought, and I bought it specifically because it was supposed to be a miniature tree, but it didn't turn out to be a miniature tree. And so my husband kept saying, this tree is killing the lawn. I think we need to take it out. And so one day we went out and looked at it together, and in my mind, it's a miniature tree, even though it's not, right? And so I keep saying, well, I think it just needs to be pruned. And he kept saying, I think it needs to come out, So we started this conversation, and then I needed to leave to go to work, and I came home and the tree's gone. And my first thought was, oh my God, he just waited, until I left so he could cut that tree down behind my back.
Yeah.
So I asked him about it and I was mad, I asked him about it later, and I said, why did you cut the tree down? And he said, well, because we talked about it. And I thought that was so interesting, because in my mind, we had started to talk about it, but we hadn't come to a conclusion. But he thinks very differently than I do about everything. Mm-hmm. And in his mind, we had the discussion, and so it was, the tree came down. So now we have this little metaphor when there's something, that we've been talking about, and we'll say at the, maybe at the end of the conversation, we'll say, now, is this like the tree, or are we finished?
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so many things that I've learned about myself. I mean, for one thing, I see how much thinking that goes on that I'm not aware of. So I haven't verbalized it. Mm-hmm. And then it creates a misunderstanding or, a potential conflict or something like that. And then I think about it, I can reflect on that, and I can see, well, I really didn't I wasn't aware, so I didn't share all of the thoughts I had about this situation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, I mean, the fact that there's someone or other people, that you're come up against, I guess you could say, my reality comes up against other people's reality constantly. It's always an opportunity to learn, at the very least, more about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Really?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And you know what I can see about me? It's like the things that I don't bring up for years and years and years, it's like I know I can't stay settled down enough to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get mean and nasty.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not willing to head into that knowing it. And so with about Keith's use of the signals on the car, the turn signals, he didn't ever use them. And I, use your signals. It didn't make any difference. I finally thought, well, I don't have to do those little yells anymore. That is, I've gotten nowhere with that. And so then finally, and I thought, I guess I just have to wait until I can stay settled down enough to have a really mature talk about this, and really listen and not be mean and sarcastic. And so then there was that day was there one day. We went over to the co-op. We were there early. We didn't have to be anywhere later. I thought, I'm going to ask you. He was in a parking lot, wouldn't use a signal for anything. People are all wondering, which way is he going to go? If he's going to go left, I'll go ahead and go right, But no, and I thought he could help a guy out here if he wanted to, but he just doesn't think to. So then I asked him, I said, could we talk about the turn signals? And he didn't want to, of course. I said, please. I said, I'll be very nice. I said, I promise, And so I said, we're not in a hurry. I said, I said, I'm curious to know how you think about them. And I said, I thought you would use them in this parking lot, as busy as they are, with as many people as are looking for parking places. You could have helped a lot of people out, but you didn't. And I don't understand. Help me out here. And then he says, using turn signals in a parking lot, he said, that's ridiculous. And so I thought, oh, well, that helps me out right there. He thinks it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so
what does that have to do with traffic? Or highways,
Yeah. But we were in a parking lot. And so I said, well, I said, people then can go ahead and take other advantageous places if they know where you're going to go. Because you can either be entering the parking lot, leaving the parking lot, turning left, turning right. I said, there's a lot of options here. And I said, I've had to spend a lot more time in parking lots than you have. I understand that. But I said, I think that there's a respect and an etiquette with one another about it. And he was just flabbergasted. So we did actually talk about that for a little while. He says, I've never thought such a thing in my life that it would ever come down to respect. He said, this really takes me by surprise. And so then we go on to talk about it. And I don't get mad. He gets out of the car a couple of times, like, come on, let's go. But I don't get out of the car. I thought, we're not through with this talk, And so then he realizes I'm not getting out, so he gets back in again. And a little bit reluctantly, I must say, that's okay. I can handle that. And so we just go on and we talk more about it. And then he changes about it. His feeling changes about our conversation. And he says, you know what? He says, I remember something that happened a long time ago. He said, I took driver's ed. He said, they taught me all this stuff about turn signals, a whole lot of stuff about a whole lot of stuff, And he said, as I was getting older and driving, he said, I was a safe driver. My family members were safe drivers. And he said, I just thought, I think they kind of overdid it with that stuff. The signals, the safety, just a lot of different things. And so he kind of threw them out of his driving book. You know, oh, you don't need that, and you don't need that. Let's throw this out, throw that out. So he threw a lot of stuff out. And he was a little bit surprised. He didn't think that was the best idea, actually, when he took a look at it, that he had thrown a lot of the safe driving habits out. Is that, am I saying it the right way? Should I let you tell a little something about this?
No, you're doing great.
Well, anyway, so we just talked about things, and anything that I would bring up, he would say, I have never thought about that in my life. And so as we go on, we're sitting there, and then I said, oh my gosh. I said, I just realized there's something that I do that's disrespectful. Now, I wasn't even thinking that I was going to find out something about myself here, you know, but I saw it, and I said, I don't always use my seatbelt. And I said, that's disrespectful to the other people around me. And I said, right here now, I said, I'm on board for using my seatbelt. I can see that's disrespectful. And I said, and if you see that I'm not using it, you have my full permission to tell me. And I'm thinking I'm not going to say mind your own business. I'm thinking I'm going to say, oh, thank you so much, and put it on. And from that moment, what would you say, 95% of the time I remember to put my seatbelt on myself. Mm-hmm. And then 5% of the time I honestly forget. And then he reminds me, and then I put it on. And then I thought about another incident that happened. We'd been driving in areas we weren't real familiar with. He had saved our lives a few days before, and I had saved our lives a few days before. We both misunderstood if you could get in the left lane or not from a certain place. And he was just getting ready to save our lives. It was pretty slow traffic. I think, well, I should say, dent our car. You know, and I said, you know, and we're both getting older. And I said, if you hadn't have said something when we were pulling out of the bookstore the other day, I said, we would have had a wreck. I said, I did not see that car. And I said, when we were coming down from the hospital the other day, I said, if you hadn't have seen something, if I hadn't have seen something, we would have had a wreck. I said, I think we're both going to have to help each other out as much as we can, as often as we can, to make it through this old life. And we both agreed upon that too, rather than, thinking the other person was butting in on your driving or something like that, you know. So it was great that we even had insights about other issues about driving and being in the car together. But it was cool that I realized that I was going to have to be able to stay settled down. Because I'm not always nice, and I can get really sarcastic and bitingly. Ooh, I'm tough. I can think of really hurtful things to say. I don't do it much anymore, but I used to do it, and I'm much nicer than I used to be, and it's because of understanding things like separate realities. And I know that Sid would tell us, just have a good feeling, and that would cover that. But I needed more than that. Just having a good feeling, I don't know, but no, understanding separate realities, there was something about that made sense to me, that changed me. And now I did end up having a better feeling, a whole lot of the time, because I didn't do the bad behavior, or I didn't get confused about how that we are all in separate realities.
It's interesting that Balder was able to see what was happening all those years. For Kate, it looked like nothing was wrong. It was just fine, normal.
Oh.
Yeah,
He didn't think anything was wrong. What did you think about when I would say, use your signals?
Well, I remember telling this story to an audience in England, and when I said turn signals, they couldn't relate to it, and then and I said, well, what do you call them? They said, oh, indicators, and I thought, oh, indicators.
He's never thought about them like
indicators. That. Yeah, so then it became applicable in a parking lot. You know, I wasn't turning in a parking lot, but as an indicator, as a courtesy, I thought, oh yeah, of course, that would be that's a way to let other drivers know. I thought it was reserved for driving on the highway, when you're changing lanes or something. But so there were new insights in store. I mean, how many insights can a person have in life? I mean, hopefully a lot, and they're always helpful. They're always positive. They're always beneficial to you, and
even if you see the bad part of yourself.
Yeah, even if that.
I don't know if people would call that positive.
Well, but it is positive. It's humbling.
I think it is.
It's educational. It's very sober. It's sobering. Those are things that everybody would. I mean, most people would say. Yeah, that was really like. That meant something to me, to see things from a different light.
You know what I think?
We need to go.
Okay, we need to go.
We could talk on, but I'm just saying,
well,
we know we're over time.
Keith is very sure of himself, and he could easily ignore, without feeling disrespectful, that I had some hang up about the turn signals, for those many years. And I think he just, it's like, oh, there she goes again. He didn't take it to heart. He didn't think there was anything he needed to take to heart. And so he didn't have hardly any thinking about it. And that was another reason I gave up on what I was doing, because it was getting nowhere. I mean, I made no headway whatsoever. Mm. And that I thought, well, now this is silly of me at this point, to carry on. But I didn't know how to bring it up correctly either. Once I had that, well, I knew I could stay settled down. It was great. Mm. I thought, I can bring up the unthinkable. Mm. I can talk about the untalkable,
Which is helpful to people that are like me, that are sort of like, I don't know, never mind, or
oblivious,
or what has that got to do with anything? A lot of people have that kind of state of mind or attitude. It's not really a bad feeling, but it is dismissive and impenetrable to her, so it was a feeling I was in, of being like, what are you yammering about, or something, and that was my attitude, but it was actually a problem, but I couldn't spot it as a problem. But when you brought, and then bringing it up upset, when you brought it up not upset, it was like, whoa, I have to really take, it forced me to get off my position. Mm-hmm. And that was really, really very powerful and helpful.
She also didn't get out of the car.
Me too.
but that was because you knew you were settled down. You knew that you weren't in a fighting mode. So you just were holding on to what you saw as true. You didn't run away.
Yeah, and I wanted to get the heck out of there. But she was like, I opened the door, and then I noticed she hadn't budged an inch. She hadn't do anything.
I couldn't have been nicer. I was so nice. What can you say to somebody who's being that nice?
Yeah, really.
You just really don't even want to pick a fight with them, because it's going to be such a bad look for you. Yeah. That you're fighting with a person who's that nice. So you get back in the car. He was so nice one time. He just completely amazed me. And I walked out in the hall. I'd gotten really mad at him, and I told him all sorts of stuff, and I'm shaking my finger at him. And I said, I don't know who you think you are, but if you think you can talk to me that way, you better think twice. I'm doing all this. And then the poor guy, I look at him, and he is completely clueless. And he said, Val, he says, I can tell you're mad at me. He said, I don't have a clue why. And he said, you'll have to tell me why, because I'm clueless here. And I could tell he meant it, you know. And I said, well, okay, you know, and then I told him, and then he was still clueless. And so then I thought, oh, I'm picking a fight with a man who didn't put intentionally. No, here's what he told me. He says, Val, you have to remember who I am. And he says, I'm not nearly quick enough to have done that. He said, now you could have done that. But he said, not me. And I thought, he's right about that. He doesn't work that way. He doesn't.
I remember saying, I'm not that clever.
Not clever or something.
You're very clever. You know, like she can think on her feet and come back at you. But I'm like, what? You know?
When he said it, I thought, oh, he's right about that, isn't he? Okay, he's not that. It was so cute. I'm not nearly that clever, he says. So it's, you know, but he was being so honest and so nice that I walked out in the hall and I walked right back in and I said, I would like to apologize for my behavior. My bad. I said, that was bad on my part. And so yeah, we ended up talking about, I said, I can tell you didn't have any bad intention in your heart when you said that to me. It was just a comment to you. But I would have had bad intention had I have said that to you. That was great for me to learn too about the two of us, you know. That I could say something and I would mean for it to cut, and he could say something and he would be clueless, you know. So there's just so much to learn. I love that we get to see your house, Barbara. She's got such an interesting house. A woman built that house, that rock house that she lives in.
Yeah, rock by rock.
Yeah, it's true. It's pretty amazing. They're great.
And all these terraces all around the house.
Yeah.
Woman built too.
That we've uncovered. We didn't even know those terraces were here when we moved here. They were just covered up with ivy. When the ivy started to crawl into the house, I started to pull the ivy back, and little by little we've uncovered all kinds of terraces, and there's still things to uncover here that we haven't found.
That's amazing.
A fun place.
It's a cool house, and you guys really love it, which works out well for you.
We do.
Yeah. Okay, Brent.